So the variants usually are degrees between candidacies, Republican or Democrat president in the past. But there's usually a very strong guideline with respect to the fundamental values of dealing with refugees, the fundamental values of protecting people, and trying to make a difference. And I think traditionally, Republican presidents, Democratic presidents alike have applied those standards. This is the first campaign I can think of where there's been as dramatic a variant in some of the proposals, without getting specific.
That was Secretary of State John Kerry only a few moments ago speaking to college students. Without getting specific, he was clearly talking about Donald Trump. This as the Obama administration's policy on Syria is being challenged in an unprecedented public criticism by more than 50 State Department diplomats, a protest that was in fact publicly praised by Kerry himself.
Well, I haven't had a chance to see it yet, but I agree with the process. It's a great process. It gives people a chance to express their views, and we will process it now.
The significant thing is the 50 number.
I think it's an important statement, and I respect the process very, very much. And I will probably meet with people or have a chance to talk when we get back.
He did just get back. Joining me now, Gail Lamont, senior fellow at the Council on Foreign Relations. Gail, the protest, which was through an internal protest mechanism at the State Department, we've never seen 50 diplomats using it. It's usually one letter or another letter, but this was signed by 50 people saying that we should not be going after ISIS, we should be going after Assad, the regime, because the civil war is what produced ISIS, produced the migration crisis, is the root cause. And so here you have diplomats arguing for military intervention against a White House which has been allergic to military intervention, absolutely, and a Secretary of State caught in the middle.
I mean, this is really a 4-page memo that was 4 years in the making. And when you talk to the folks who were part of this,
as you have,
yes, and you know, as I know you do regularly, the issue is that this was a long time coming, and it's for them sort of about 3 L's: leadership, leverage, and lives. And their sense is that, you know, American leverage is not helping to save enough lives because we don't have enough of it, because there is no credible military threat in their view. And I think it was a tough decision for a lot of people to do this, but they really did feel like this was not necessarily about the Obama administration, but about setting the agenda for the next administration to come.
And I know what the military's response would be is that we don't have authorization for regime change. And if you want to do that, go to Congress, because that's the process. I think what is widely known among those of us who cover Secretary Kerry is that he's been frustrated by the inaction, and that his diplomacy, especially since Russia entered the theater with their airstrikes in September, his diplomacy has been hampered by the lack of a credible military threat from the White House.
That's right. And this has always been, since 2013, when you talk to people who've touched this policy, that the price of inaction has not necessarily been weighed. And for those who sympathize with Secretary Kerry's views, it's that the leverage for enforcing a diplomatic response is not there, that there is not a credible threat of a what if you know, a diplomatic route fails. And right now he's worked tirelessly on the diplomatic front, but you know, look at where we are now. The cessation of hostilities is in tatters. Russia is bombing U.S. forces that are specifically created to fight ISIL. I mean, it's a tough situation.
In fact, there were military meetings over the weekend, the U.S. military protesting vigorously to the military leaders in Russia at these latest bombings.
Absolutely.
That what happened last week was just intolerable.
Absolutely. And I mean, this Russian bombing campaign, look, I was there at the start of the year, and a Syrian activist showed me video, YouTube video he had shot of the hole in the ground where his house used to be after a Russian bombing campaign. And, you know, you hear him running to see where his house once was. So this has been going on for a while, but now this was southern Syria. They bombed, you know, Russians bombed forces that were specifically created to fight ISIS. So you couldn't say that it was, you know, something that was right or was unintended.
And in fact, what the military would say is if it were a mistake, it says volumes about how bad the command and control is. And if it's not a mistake, it's even more outrageous.
Right. And one diplomat raised me, you know, what we had been talking about special operations forces that are in Syria. What if U.S. special operations forces had been there? Then what? Then what situation would you have been in with the U.S. and Russia, right?
And there's no way to say that they weren't, in fact. Thank you so much. It's great to see you, Gail. It's just such a tough situation.
It is.
And speaking of this continuing tragedy, today in London, Parliament came together in a way it rarely does, coming in on a day where they weren't supposed to be in session to honor Jo Cox, the young member of Parliament who was shot and killed in her constituency last week. Members of Parliament from both sides sitting in the chambers together in a show of unity.
Jo's politics were inspired by love, and the outpouring and unity of the tributes we've seen in the past few days show the extraordinary reach and impact of her message.
Cox was murdered a week before this Thursday's contentious so-called Brexit vote. Latest polls showing a near-even split among voters on whether Britain should remain in the European Union. She was strongly in favor of remaining and in favor of an open immigration policy for the UK. Coming up,